ongoing, and so this one's kind of in infancy. But I agree with you. I 100% agree. The force-on-force stuff is great. I do think the hands-on combatives training that we do with Benny is phenomenal. It's a real eye-opener because, like you said, when you present somebody with these scenarios, and you say, "Well, what are you going to do?" and you're like, "Well, I'll just pull out my gun and shoot him." Well, that's murder. You can't do that. There is a criteria that has to be met for self-defense, and I 100% believe everybody has the right to defend themselves with deadly force if necessary, but you have to meet the opportunity, the ability, jeopardy, and or intent aspect of that. You can't, when I know the news, which is a horrible place to get any information, but
unfortunately,
stand your ground laws and things like that. They say, "Oh, all you have to say is I was in fear for my life." No, it doesn't work that way. That's not the legal definition of stand your ground. In the anti-gun assholes out there are the reason that stand your ground laws had to be implemented in the first place, because they always were saying, "Well, you had the ability to run away. You could have done this. You could have done that." And they start playing that what if game.
Yeah.
They're convicting people that had justifiable shoots, but didn't necessarily run away for whatever reason. And they were, convicting those people of homicide, and that they kind of realized that's not right. People have to be able to defend themselves, and you can't always put the burden on the person that's being attacked. So you can't just say I was in fear for my life and shoot somebody. That's not going to fly in a court of law anywhere.
Well, and that's something too, is being able to articulate every single piece of it plays a huge role. So like I have like a 15-step checklist. Well, I have to check 1 through 14. Number 15 is shoot him in the face. It's not I got scared, shoot him in the face.
Right. You do. So. We teach a lot of I think the basic underlying kind of thought behind everything that we teach is you will win every fight you don't get in. And you are much better off avoiding any fight if possible. People say, "Oh, if somebody did that, I'd shoot him." Be like, dude, I don't think you've really thought this through. If some guy loses his cool and is out beating on the side of my car,
have fun. Yeah.
Drive off, bro. Drive away if possible. If not, let the guy act like a fool. He'll damage your car and it'll piss you off, but you just can't shoot the guy.
Right. You have a cell phone with a camera. Just take a picture of him. There's other insurance, pay it. Just calm down. I have seen, I'm not going to mention any names or anything, but I have seen some instructors that teach the martial arts side with the firearm side, and they teach them to be more aggressive in the civilian capacity, to where it's like, oh, a threat's present itself, throw these punches and throw these kicks. And it's like, man, some of these people that I don't think that's always the right message, because throwing punches and throwing kicks at someone is the same as what we were just talking about, where it might not be the right time to shoot them. Well, just because he's aggressive, hooting and hollering, you can't just be punching him in the face every time.
Right. And you remember that stupid movie, Napoleon Dynamite?
Yes.
I mean, I never quite got the movie. I never really found it that funny. The whole time I was like, this is just dumb. Yeah. But the scene in there where the guy's the kung fu dude and he's like, grab my hand. No, this way. No, do that. It has to be the perfect kind of thing to set up for him to be able to do it. And a lot of those kicks and those punches and things like that are a lot more complicated than people realize. And again, it's not the best situation to do that. And we preach avoidance, situational awareness, spatial awareness. If you keep your head on a swivel and things like that, and keep your wits about you, you should be able to avoid most situations. And going back to the protection aspect of high threat protection. And we're rolling around in Baghdad in some pretty nasty neighborhoods and things like that. But our job is protection, to run away. So you need to do due diligence and prepare for the situation you're going into, so you avoid having to shoot somebody.
Yeah.
In the protection world, if it's coming to you shooting people, a lot of things have gone wrong.
For you to get
probably
to that.
could have been avoided. And so we, home defense is the same way. Try to explain to people there's certain things, what's your commander's intent behind home defense? What is your overall intent? Is usually to protect your loved ones and then protect yourself. I'm not overly concerned about people stealing shit out of my house, because the things that are valuable to me in my home are not computers, they're not televisions and things like that. So I have my house set up in a way that I can protect my wife and my kids, and I have a plan in place to do all of these things, that I don't necessarily have to go and seek out this intruder. I'm going to just get to a point of dominance, put my wife and kids in a separate area, and then I'm just going to kind of squat and hold in that spot. If that person doesn't cross kind of that threshold, I'm not going to go down and get into it with them.
Really? You're not going to do a John Wick press check and then go and clear your house?
No.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not. Situations change, and then you might have to go do that depending on what's going on. But I wake up in the middle of the night and I hear somebody downstairs, count for both my kids. They know what to do. My wife knows what to do. Yeah, I'm going to get to a point of dominance in my house, and that's where I'm going to wait. My wife and kids are going to call the police and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to go actively pursue this guy, because there's just too many things that can go wrong. And we don't preach that over aggressive things to the civilian world. A couple weeks ago, we were training some Air Force special operations guys, and that's different. That's a different set of circumstances where that violence of action, that aggressive speed, speed, surprise, violence of action aspect of fighting is a little bit different in what they need to be able to do. The aggressive nature of the situations that they find themselves in, that's completely different. And
so that's a point that I had made in the past, was looking, and I don't know if you've seen it as well, but looking at some individuals that come from the military, when they start training in the civilian side, they're training them on military stuff. And they're not understanding, like, well, okay, when you were deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever it was, you walked around in full kit and your rifle was what you did. This isn't the same scenario here. And then, like, even some of the trainings where they do, like, I paid money for it, but I paid money to go to this guy's class, and I learned basic rifle marksmanship and advanced rifle marksmanship, which he took from the FM from the military. It just was teaching it to make money for it, because the civilians didn't know any better. But that played a huge part in it too, was just some of the stuff he was saying. Yeah, that worked when you were deployed, because that was a different mission. Your ROE, if you will, was different.
Yes.
Grandma going to Walmart is not in full kit with an AR-15 on her chest.
Well, and she's not in a fire team or in a squad. And that's,
right.
As you'll see people teaching room clearing or whatever you want to call it, CQB style stuff, and they're teaching it from the military perspective, where you have 2 and 3 guys or people going into a room to clear that room. So the approach is different. But when you're by yourself, it's a completely different animal, and you have to think differently. You have to act differently. You have to make different assessments on which way you're going to go. Why am I going to go into this room as opposed to that room? Moving down this hallway, it's completely different. And so you'll see military backgrounded people teaching the team aspect of clearing rooms and things along those lines. And again, you start putting force on force into the situation, and you realize real quick that's not going to work.
Yeah,
it's not going to work.
And I say too, if a mistake you make in a team atmosphere, certain mistakes obviously can get other people injured or killed, but maybe a team member will catch the mistake you made and get it corrected. When you're doing it by yourself, that mistake is amplified by 100, because you're the only one that it applied to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's there's so many different ways to approach these things, and you have to take into account, that the old joke in the military was when somebody asked you a question, the cop out answer was, well, situationally dependent, because that covered every basis. It's basically your way of saying I don't know, but I'm going to say something that makes it sound like I'm smart. And but there's also some truth to it, that it is always situationally dependent.
Yeah.
And so yeah, am I entering a building to recover somebody that's hard pointed in a room? Well, my approach to getting from point A to point B in that situation is going to be different if I'm going into a building and I'm looking for someone. Am I there looking for someone to, take them out of the building? I want to capture somebody. Am I trying to recover somebody that's being held hostage? I mean, not that I'm a hostage rescue expert guy, but I know the situation is different. It's going to be approached in a different way, a different set of solutions. It's going to get me to that overall goal. But when you're by yourself, it's a different set of circumstances. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't take that into the account when they start to teach some of these things. They forget, I don't have a squad of guys with me or even a buddy. You're by yourself.
Exactly. And where I've seen that really come out, especially during the force on force, is when they've only done the team room clearing and stuff, and then they forget to check behind them because they're normally the number one, number two, or number three guy. They're not the dude. They're not the dude at the last of the stack. So they'll go clear a whole hallway, and they won't notice that I was standing in a corner or something, and they walked right by me, and they don't constantly check behind them. So,
they get focused on, well, I'm the one guy.
Yeah.
Well, no, you're the 1, 2, 3, 4 guy.
Yeah.
You're it. You need to check your 6 as much as you need to check your front.
Yep.
And but no, in the force on force thing really exposes that, and it also exposes the idea that you don't want to go down and get into some sort of jackpot situation with a criminal in your house, because you may lose.
Yep.
You're trained, it's your home, you have an advantage, but at the same time, when you get in a fight inside of a phone booth, it's pretty iffy.
Yeah. And there's a lot of times where gun owners especially, but trainers, I've seen it too, where they just let their egos overpower common sense.
Right.
And
that's probably the biggest kind of thing within the firearms industry that is annoying, is the ego-driven, not just instructor, but the ego-driven student, the ego-driven guy or girl carrying a gun, that they think, I took this class, I know my shit, you can't tell me nothing. And it's funny how you'll get a student, or you'll just come across somebody that was taught something by somebody, and man, you cannot convince that person of any other possible way to do it. It's like, this is it. This is the only way to do this. And it was 25 years ago that I learned it, and I am not going to change my way of thinking.
Yeah.
That is the worst thing in the industry to me.
So I'll tell you what I started doing is before each of my classes, I go and I'll staple let's see if I had one. I go and staple like a 3-inch dot in front of the student in their firing lane. I put them at 5 yards. And I say, okay, hey, give me 3 shots. We'll do about 6 seconds. 6 seconds, give me 3 shots. I don't tell them how to grip a gun. I don't tell them how to do anything. They just pull the gun out and shoot how they would have normally shot it. And then I put another dot next to it, and then I go up to them and I make improvements from there, shoot 3 more. And they see the difference of what they did the first time and what they did the second time. And I've just done that to eliminate, okay, you have an ego, cool. Which one made you shoot better?
Right.
Okay.
There is, sometimes that ego-driven person or ego student, in some ways, you kind of have to not necessarily embarrass them, but you kind of have to let them show themselves that they're wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, and
You
That's
know,
why I set those two targets up.
exactly. And it's like, I'm not doing this to publicly embarrass you per se. Like, I'm not saying, hey, let's have everybody watch, Steve the asshole shoot, and then, I'll shoot next to him and say, maybe I know what I'm talking about a little bit, but you can do it in a more subtle way where you say, look, dude, I get it. You were taught this way. It works, but it's not the most effective way possible. And, and I've always been, if somebody was to come to me, I don't care if you're 7 years old and you say, because sometimes that ignorance, like Gaston Glock, man, he wasn't a gun guy. He didn't even know what he didn't know. And he was like, this just sounds like a good idea. And he did it.
Yeah.
So, if somebody comes to me with something that they think is a good idea, I'm not going to dismiss it because of like, well, you're a 10-year-old kid. What could you possibly know? You don't know what that kid knows. Yeah. Granted, it's probably unlikely that a 10-year-old is going to just start dropping wisdom on you, but just to illustrate the point that you can learn a technique or you can learn something that from anybody. You should never dismiss that. And, and so the ego-driven stuff within the industry is kind of annoying.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, I don't know if you have time for it, but I try to go and take as many courses as I can as a student and as the obviously teaching, but I'll go try to take courses. And one of the big reasons why I do it is, one, so I can see what's being taught out there. Two, so I can see who else to send my students to. I don't want a cult. I want educated people who know as much as I do. But I went and took one dude's class. It was a 2-day class. And everybody there was like, well, hey, what do you teach? What do you teach? And I was like, nope. Hey, I wasn't even going to tell you I was an instructor, but the other guy already did. You're not paying money to hear what I think. You're paying money to see what he thinks. But I have had people come through classes who are instructors, and they're arguing with me about what they teach, but then they can't shoot. So it was just kind of like, okay, man, like
maybe that doesn't work. No, I did that. I took a course with Larry Vickers, and I was there as a student, and a guy next to me, I noticed what he was doing wrong, but when Larry came by me, I kind of just whispered in his ear, I think this is what this guy's doing. And then Larry went and made the correction to the guy. Because you're right. This guy didn't pay for me to come over there and start giving him advice. And if Larry would have just said, no, he's not doing that, shut up, I would have, okay, I'll shut up. But, you do. You need to take other courses with other instructors. Even as an instructor, you need to do it. Being out in Colorado is weird. People don't come out here and put on classes, and I don't know why, but I'll go in and I'll check these instructors who are guys that I would like to take a course from, and there's not one of them that ever comes out here, and I don't know why that is. Really, maybe it's just they have trouble filling them up. I don't know. I mean, I do teach some classes here in Colorado, and but for me, it's worth my while to teach a class of 5 or 6 people here in Colorado, just because I don't really have to travel anywhere. I don't have plane tickets. I don't have hotel rooms to pay for and all that stuff. So it financially, it's still worth your time to do that. But between Battleline, teaching on my own, running the dry fire business, doing all the stuff with our sponsors and these events, and now Chris and I have created our own vodka label. So we're going to be releasing our vodka. I have my mock-up of the case in here.
Can you show that? Hold on. Do you have it patented?
See that? It's got the thing, and so it's Tonto's vodka, made in the United States, and so I just don't have time really to travel somewhere else to take a course. If they would come to Colorado, I would absolutely go do it because I could just drive there. But it is hard to get out and to take some of these courses. And, and I know some people say, oh, it's expensive and this and that. And it's like, well, how many guns do you own? And they're like, well, I have 10 ARs and 17 handguns and 5 shotguns and all this kind of, and you're like, dude, sell one of those freaking guns, or just don't buy another one this year and take an actual training class and really learn how to use one of those guns. I have, my wife thinks I have a crazy amount of guns, but truth is I don't, compared to some people that have, 100, 200. I have a decent amount of them. Yeah. But to me, I would rather have one handgun and just shoot the shit out of that one gun, because you'll know how to use it, as opposed to 15, 20 handguns. They all have different sight pictures. They have different holds on them, different triggers, different presentations, different grip angles, different trigger breaks, all these things. It's really hard to master. It's hard to master one gun, let alone 20 of them.
Yeah. Getting a gun, getting a 20% experience, getting a new one, 10%, then 10, and then 20, then 30. Get one, get to 100, and then, switch it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, I try to keep all my guns about as close to the same as possible, whether they're 1911 driven platforms or 2011 platforms. We've been running STIs for the last year, 2011 style gun. So, I've spent a lot of time with 1911s just because I really like them. So I kind of understand how to run one. But, the striker fired guns, then you get the double action, single action guns. I try to stay away from, all these different platforms. I kind of just keep it down to the 1911, 2011 style gun or the striker fired gun. And then even within the striker fired system or gun platform, I try to keep it, Glock 19, SIG P320, SIG 365, or a Glock 43X, because I can't master all these other triggers. There's other guns out there. CZ makes a great gun. I love the P10Cs. I like the SP01s and all that kind of stuff. But I don't have the time to put in to master that double action, single action trigger, or the little subtleties on the P10C that you have to change your grip just a little bit so you don't engage that slide lock all the time with your support hand. Because if I put my hand in the same spot on that gun as I do on my Glock, I'm gonna, the slide won't lock to the rear on an empty mag. Yeah. So I do try to master just the one thing. Try to have them set up as close as possible to the again, that same trigger break. I'm a little picky. I like a 4 to 5 pound trigger. There's nothing wrong with a 6 pound trigger, but I like that 4 to 5 pound range. So all my striker fired guns are set up to run in that 4 to 5 pound range. Try to keep everything as close to the same as possible. But yeah, just buy one less gun a year and go take a real shooting class.
Yeah, that's something. One of the things I was going to bring up is just, I was kind of shocked with the lack of credentials when it comes to instructing. When I had said, hey, I want to be an instructor, the first thing I did was take other people's courses. I didn't start teaching. I went to see, okay, how do you teach? Because me teaching a class in the military is completely different than now people are paying to be here. Yes. So I wanted to understand, okay, what do I need to do to, get there? And some instructors said, don't ever shoot in front of your students. Other instructors said, always shoot in front of your students. So I agree with that mentality. I'm going to shoot in front of my students so they know what they paid for. Because I've taken courses where the dude was telling me to do stuff, but when he shot, it didn't add up. He couldn't do what he said he could do. Right. So then I found Instagram. I just made an Instagram account like a year and a half ago. I'd never had one before that because I didn't like social media. I didn't care for it. And then I made one so I could promote. And I just saw all these people on there who they have no legitimate firearms experience, but their opinion is held higher than others. And I was blown away by that.
Well, it's that, yeah, the social media aspect of things, the Instagram aspect of things.
And you can plead the fifth. If you want to skip to the next subject, we can skip to
no,
the
I have no issues with that whatsoever.
Okay.
And because, I mean, it's a blessing and it's a curse kind of deal that, you know, you kind of have to have it so people can see what you're doing and things along those lines. But it's very hard to convey much in a minute. It really is. And you talk to people that are good at it, and it's a system you kind of have to learn to manipulate, which again is not always the most honest thing in the world. And you will. This is kind of funny. Like, I was at the SHOT Show years ago, and one of the guys I was with, he says, where's all these Instagram gun bunnies at? I was like, dude, they're all here. You've been walking past them all day. They just don't look that way in real life.
Yeah.
You know, it's not real, man. It's fake. It's filters, and it's cutting things to make it look a certain way. And yeah, I mean, you can run a gun pretty fast if you're at 3 yards and you're shooting a 2 foot by 2 foot piece of steel that makes it ding, ding, ding. You know, you don't see how big that piece of steel is that they're shooting. All you see is that they're running the gun really fast, and you hear the steel, or it's like the 50th take of the day that they finally film, and that's the one they put out. And I've been to events where these influencer people are there, and you'll see them. They'll run something 20 or 30 times, and then they'll say, okay, film this one. Or they're like, oh, I screwed that one up, film another one. And then you see that person on Instagram 2 weeks later posting that course of fire that they ran, and there's no indication in there that they've run it 30 times. They make it look like this is who I am and how I shoot. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that that's kind of how it has to be, because otherwise no one pays attention.
Yeah. And, I'll say I did what I do anytime I film. I film mine after I teach a class, because the range is about an hour away from me. So I'm not making that trip up there just to shoot. But after my class, I always will shoot videos and stuff. Well, all my students are now following me on YouTube and Instagram, so they all want to stay up there to watch me shoot. And I was like, crap, I got the pressure of filming it for one, and then now you guys are around me, so I can't even film it 100 times and say I did it once.
It's hard because they, you know, I think the best thing you can do is just be honest with who you are and where your abilities are and things like that. You know, I saw a post by this guy, Bob Keller, and he's a former Ranger Battalion guy, went up to CAG and all that stuff. You know, the real deal. I mean, it's as real as they come. And he was saying something along the lines that, you know, when you teach a lot, you don't get to shoot a lot. And then when you do get to shoot, you don't shoot as well as you used to be able to. And which means you miss sometimes. And I thought it was, you know, here's a guy who is absolutely, you know, one of the greatest warriors that's ever walked the face of this earth. And he's being honest and saying that, yeah, you can miss from time to time when you don't do this every single day constantly and things like that. So it was kind of refreshing to hear some honesty from some people. Yeah. Instagram, and then it turns into, well, this guy has 100,000 followers. He must be legit. Okay. Like, well, okay. So
let me say this, and then I'm gonna get into that, because I'm Irish, and that one gets my blood hot. What I think is funny as well is going off what you were talking about with missing. I think it's important to show students how to miss. And what I mean by how to miss is that when you miss, not to say, oh crap, set the gun down, get mad about it, pick the gun back up, reload it, and shoot it again. You're not going to do that in a gunfight. So if you miss, that means it's more important for you to hit the target faster immediately. So you need to collect yourself. You need to, you know what I mean, do all the right things, proper sight picture, proper press on the trigger. But that's what I take away from me missing is, okay, you're going to miss. What are you doing after you miss? Are you just quitting? Or are you trying again? So.
Well, yeah, and I try to teach people to minimize the miss kind of thing, that you don't ever want to be completely missing the individual.
Absolutely, yeah.
You might be missing, this fist-sized group that you want, or you want to be able to have the ability to do. But yeah, if you're missing on the right plane up and down, or if you miss a little bit left and right and things like that, yeah, you've created another wound channel. And that's actually more devastating than 1-2 rounds, basically the same wound channel. But you want to be doing that on purpose, so you don't want to technically use the word miss, but people are going to have rounds that land outside of the desired impact zone, let's say. And, it's how do you recover from that matters. And that's why, I try to preach to people so much about the front sight focus thing, reading your sights, because the only way you're going to know you missed in a real situation is, where were your sights when you broke the shot? Because you're not going to see, people aren't made out of paper. You're not going to see a hole in the guy. You're not made out of steel. It's not going to make a noise. If you're wearing a dark shirt or a jacket or, anything really, those impacts become almost impossible to see, especially when you're moving and the target's moving and all those things. So you have to be able to read those sights to know, okay, that round went a little left or a little high or a little low, and read those sights to get that feedback, because the attacker isn't necessarily going to give you any feedback. Your sights will give you the feedback as to where that round impacted. So you're right. It's okay. I put that shot a little bit off. I have to recover. How do I recover and move on? I mean, if you're just straight missing the entire silhouette,
we have bigger issues. Yeah,
we got bigger issues. We need to go back and reassess the situation. But putting around a little bit off of your desired point of impact, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Especially